Welcome to Listening with China Blue. This is a podcast that focuses on how listening not only informs us about what is occurring in the world around us, but also helps us connect with others, build stronger businesses, strengthens our mental health, and become more creative and compassionate individuals. As more and more people practice attentive listening in a community, it becomes a community-building practice that strengthens our mental health as we learn from our neighbors. I will be interviewing people from all walks of life to learn how listening has informed them in their field and helped them to make intelligent decisions. They will be artists, musicians, composers, dancers, business people, psychologists, neuroscientists, and Buddhists, to name a few. About me, I'm an internationally exhibiting sound-based artist. In my work, Discovering Unheard Sounds, I realized that the core component that drove my work was simply listening. That realization put me on the path of speaking about and helping people learn to become better listeners. I began with leading sound walks, which I continue to do in the upstate New York region, to help people learn to listen from nature. And now, tune your ears to this podcast to learn about the power of listening. And do pay attention until the end for further information on how to start your own listening practice, share it with others, and to support Listening with China Blue. Today I'm speaking with John Yau, who is located in the Hudson Valley. He's a celebrated American poet and critic who has published over 50 books of poetry, artists' books, fiction, and art criticism. Among his collection of poetry are Corpse and Mirror, selected by John Ashbery for an award from the National Poetry Series, and Broken Off by The Music. His artists' books include projects with Squeak Carnwrath and Richard Tuttle, as well as Pat Steir, to name a few. His books of art criticism include The United States of Jasper Johns and In the Realm of Appearances, The Art of Andy Warhol. Yau was the arts editor for the Brooklyn Rail for 4 years, followed by editing Hyperallergic Weekend. He also runs a small press, Black Square Editions, which publishes translations, poetry, and fiction. Yau currently teaches art history and criticism at Mason Gross School of the Arts, Rutgers University. Yau has received many prestigious awards and grants. In 2024, his essay collection, Please Wait by the Coat Room, won the American Book Award from the Before Columbus Foundation. Welcome, John Yau. I'm so honored to speak with you today.
Oh, thank you. I'm honored to be on this program.
You know, I've known about you and your impressive contribution of poetry and art criticism to the world for almost all of my adult life.
Wow, that's a long time.
Oh, don't say it that way. But I want to say that I'm so humbled to speak with you today because of that.
Oh, thank you.
What I'm particularly interested in talking with you about is that because you've done so much writing and critiquing of artists' works, that I'm wondering what it's been like for you to listen to artists.
Listen to them talk. I'm really always interested in how artists talk or what they say.
Yeah.
Largely because I feel like every artist has his or her their own language. And it's like, I guess it's like being a therapist, which is a weird thing to say, but you have to learn what they're saying in the language that they're speaking.
Uh-huh.
You have to be sympathetic to it and not be judgmental and just try and understand. It's like reading a poem. Each poet has their own language or their own within a particular poem, and it's sort of doing the same thing.
Oh, nice. Well, you had given me an example of speaking with Ed Moses.
Right.
Can
Yes.
you tell everybody about that experience?
Okay, so Ed Moses had a particular way of describing his paintings and his process. And one of the things that he or a word that he used often was snakes, that these snakes were moving around on his painting. And you could just kind of think, what is this man saying? But after a while, it's like you realize he's describing a certain kind of mark on his painting. And he just talked about them as if they were living creatures. And I think every artist I've ever talked to has this kind of language where they're describing something in their work or about their work or about their process that seems very animated, but it's really their language. It's not my language.
Yeah, I was so interested in hearing about Ed speaking about his marks as being animated elements. It's
Right,
just a fascinating insight into an artist's production. And not everybody knows who Ed Moses is, but he was a Los Angeles artist and central figure to the post-war West Coast art scene and produced many impressive paintings. He was a painter and
right,
exhibited first at the Ferris Gallery
right.
in Los Angeles.
And he also was very generous. He introduced me to many artists that he knew in Los Angeles, drive me to their studios, really kind of introduced me to a certain community of artists within Los Angeles that were around his age, but also some younger and some older. And that was very, interesting for me, and also just got me to meet a lot of people. Tony Berlant was one of them, various other people, George Herms, whom I would also meet through Bruce Connor. So it was like learning about a community. And he was very open talking about Ferris Gallery and what it was like to show them. Introduced me to Dennis Hopper one day in a restaurant,
Wow.
and then put down Dennis's work. So that, it was interesting to see that interaction. Yeah.
And you had also compared or contrasted artists when you were speaking to me offline. And you were talking about how Jasper Johns believed that painting is a language.
Right. He said something to the extent that I'm beginning to think painting is a language. And I just thought about the fact that he's comparing a visual thing to, language. And there was something that kind of resonated with me because I had thought that for some time that there was some relationship where each, despite the different ways of working in materials, that each person is creating something that's a kind of language. It's also world building in a way, in some way, or related to
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
You
Uh,
make
road building in what sense?
world building in that you making up a world, right?
World building. Oh, okay, I'm following you now.
Yeah, you're making up or creating or evoking a world of some kind. Not in a science fiction way, but in a related or tangential way. I don't want to be reductive about this, but I feel like that's part of it.
Oh, sure. Sure. Well, I believe in that painting is a language it and art is a language in general, and it creates, if you look at it over time of one artist's production, you can see their world evolving as you follow
Right,
their work.
right.
And I just wanted to reflect back for a moment on Moses, who is also a friend of mine. And it was kind of funny later in life, he did a series. It's really kind of funny. He did a series uh, based on me.
Ah,
And it's
oh, was it your head or something like made up?
and no, it's called the China Blue X series, I think it's called.
Uh-huh.
And if it was interesting to look at it because you know, you never know what an artist is going to come up with. And he used the color China blue, which is a color, as the theme of this particular series. And it's completely abstract and expressionistic in a certain sense. So it's fascinating to see how a contemporary artist would take on the idea of a portrait in that way.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me immediately that he would do something like that. And then he just did lots of different kinds of series. And he also worked with lots of different materials, toilet paper, different, I mean, he had all different processes. He painted with a mop, painted,
Oh, yeah.
did lots of different things. He painted in the backyard. I get to watch him paint.
Oh,
Uh,
you did too. Did
yeah,
you
that
see
was
him paint
fun.
with his mop?
Yep, I did. It
It
was
was
fun.
like crazy, right?
That was totally crazy. And yeah, I mean, one group of paintings he did was grids with clouds. And he talked about that relationship to Los Angeles as a grid and a city and clouds.
Oh,
He would talk about that and not say, no, no, they're purely abstract. He wasn't afraid to go into those places of comparison as long as you weren't, too reductive about it. I mean, that you saw it as a painting first and not as a painting about X or Y. So that was also interesting.
mm-hmm.
And then he did a lot of beautiful drawings. And in the way, so one set of drawings he did, I think it was in the mid 60s, and they were all black, and there were grids that he filled in with black. He said that he had gone to the dentist and he had his tooth filled, and he couldn't believe how much filling the guy was putting into his teeth. And he thought it was just a little hole, and the guy kept putting more and more filling in it. And he said that was what the drawings came out of that experience. You would
Ooh.
never make that connection. You would never say, oh, this is about, but it's interesting how it came out of this, personal, visceral, very common, experience. And I think that was the other thing that was interesting to be around him and listen to him. I think in a way, it's important to listen to an artist in certain ways. You know, if they're talking about how great they are, then you probably should stop listening. But if if they're talking about their work and their process, it's pretty interesting.
And I gather you knew Jasper Johns personally?
Yes. No, yeah. I mean, we've met him many times and had lunch many times, and I've been to his studio many times. More so when he was in New York City and I was in New York City.
Yeah, sure. And I recall you spoke with him about the flag painting.
Right. So at one point, and I'm not sure how I figured it out, or maybe I read it somewhere, but it was not something widely written about, was that he had done the painting on a bed sheet.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you think about it, he's taken this bed sheet, he's glued it to three pieces of plywood because the sheet's been cut up. Then he's put oil paint on the painting. Then he decides not to use oil paint. He uses newspaper to soak the oil paint up. And then he puts some, I believe, encaustic on that and collage. And I
Mm.
just said to him, this is I said a few things. One is, this is a conservator's nightmare. I said, yes, it's falling apart just like me. So that was an interesting association, particularly since it was done on a bed sheet. The painting is based on, as he said, I saw myself painting a flag in a dream, or a dream that I was painting a flag. And then the other thing I asked him, now suddenly it slipped out of my head. Um, oh, I said to him, it was done on a bed sheet. I've never really, like, if you read wall label. It's like mixed media or something like that. They don't say it's on a bed sheet. And I kind of talked about other writers. I didn't mention them by name or anything. I said, well, so and so didn't say that, and so didn't say that. And all he said was, I've told people, nobody listened to me. I was like, oh, okay. Make sure I pay attention to what you're saying. I mean, he'll also say, I don't remember saying that. I mean, he's not evasive. He's just doesn't want to be pinned down. And I feel like I understand that. That's not, it's like trying to trap a firefly or something. You're trying to, the artist doesn't want to be trapped. And it's like, of course not. Poets don't want to be trapped either. I think it was
That's true.
Michael Palmer said something about interviews, like the, I think it was just something like, when you do an interview, it's like we're doing now, I guess, but when you do an interview about your work, you don't want to say something that you're going to be held to 20 years from now. Like you say, oh, my poem is about this. And then 20 years later, someone says, well, your poem is about that. And you thought, maybe it's not about that. Maybe it's really about something else.
Yeah, sure, sure. Well, artists and poets are always pushed to explain their work.
Right,
And um, classic to artistic work, it can be understood on many different levels.
right,
And so even from the artist's vantage point at different times in your life, you will understand your work in new ways.
right. Yes. I thought about that because over the last 6 months, I put together my selected poems, new and selected. And I have to say, reading these poems that I hadn't actually read some many, many years, it was like, oh, what was I thinking when I wrote this? And I wasn't sure, but I accepted that I thought that, whatever it was. So that was interesting.
It was a prior version of you.
Yes, exactly. Oh, there's another thing John said. So I told him about giving a poetry reading. And I said that after the reading, people came up and started talking to me. And I didn't think they were talking about me. I thought they were talking about someone else. And he said they were. Else. Okay.
Well, they were talking about the poet in you.
Yeah. Or they were talking about a different version of me, right? That supposedly if we're always changing, then we're not the same person.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's the Heraclitus. You can't step in the same river twice. You're not the same person
Really,
as time
surely.
keeps going. It's something, it's an interesting way to think about yourself in time, that you are literally and metaphorically in many other ways changing. No, and yeah, you're not
Yeah,
necessarily
yeah,
evolving, you're just changing, right?
exactly. It could be regressing.
Yes, true.
And, I was thinking also about John's when you were talking about the bed sheet. And you had mentioned one other thing that stopped me in my path when he talked about the bed sheet and that it was not identified as a bed sheet, but yet you thought that John's was speaking about it as if it was his own body.
Right. I mean, he says, it's it's falling apart just like me. I mean, it's an interesting way to think about your own work or someone thinking about his work.
Also, somebody not seeing any distance between their art production and their actual physical presence.
Right.
So the flag painting was, in essence, embodiment of themselves, of
Yes.
himself, of
Uh,
himself.
yeah, and I think when I wrote about it, I thought about it that way. I mean, if you have a dream and you wake up, you kind of remembering your dream, you're putting it back together, you're remembering it. And this the flag painting, you can say it's purely, whatever reason, it is made of three parts that are that there's three separate sections. So he's remembering. I mean, there's different kind of resonant connections you could make. And also in a dream, which is your body, where does your body end? And where does it begin? Because you dream about yourself in in a dream, where's your body, right? I mean, that's
Hmm.
interesting. And then the other thing that I thought about is that when you dream, you're all by yourself. You're really there's no one else in that world, literally. I mean, there's, presences, but you're in yourself. And then if you think of the stars in his flag, each of them is different. Each of them is isolated from all the others. It's like that's us dreaming in some way. So I started to make these connections between himself and a kind of common experience and the painting. Um,
So, are you saying that the painting is, in some sense, a communal dream also?
it's about how each of us dreams, and in that moment we're isolated from each other, right? And then if you think of the flag is the United States, and then dreaming, you're uniting your waking self, you're trying to connect it to your dreaming self. There's all sorts of little
Mm.
resonant connections. And then is America really united, or is it really separate? And that was another way I came to think about that painting. And yeah, it's all there to be read and thought about. And then, you can kind of be reductive about it or just as a thing to think about. And I just think of it as something that's I can think about and go back to and think about again. Which is more than you can say about some works of art.
I was going to say that that is, to me, a definition of a successful work of art.
Yeah, I know. I haven't stopped thinking about it in some ways since I looked at it. I first saw it when I first came to New York.
Yeah, you can go down that metaphor for dream for and slice it up in so many different directions that yeah, you can take a lifetime and think about it, right?
Right.
Or
Yeah,
dream about it.
exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you had mentioned something about Jones's Green Angel.
Oh, so there's a painting he made called Green Angel that he said that he wouldn't say what the source was. And so for a long time, I would just periodically try and figure out the source, which I never would. And then one day, a man, whose name I've now forgotten, and I apologize to this man, who teaches at, I believe, Cooper Union, sent me a photograph
Mm-hmm.
just through email with a note saying, I think you'll be interested in this. And the photograph, instantly I saw it, I knew that this was the source for Green Angel. And so I sent him an email and I said, it's something to the extent of you should write about this, or you have the source for Green Angel. He never mentioned Johns, I believe, in the first exchange. And then we had a short exchange in which he said that he thought I should write about it. And that's why he sent it to me. And then I did, um, saying what the source is the photograph of two pieces, small pieces that someone, I don't know, it's not clear who set this up, of two small pieces in the Rodin Museum.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, female satyr. Hope I get a minotaur and a satyr, and the
Right.
satyr is the
Right.
horse, and the minotaur's holding it up. And so then I wrote about it, and I acknowledged he sent it to me in the piece, and then at one point I said it's about something being broken, and then Johns did write me a note and said, couldn't it be about healing? So he made me see it a completely different way. And I realized when he said it that I was really too fixated on one thing, and I wasn't backing up enough to look at it in a
Yeah.
broad sense.
And in the Rodin sculpture, it's the satyr has no arms and no legs.
Right. Or it's broken in some way. And so and the Minotaur seems to be broken in some way. And it's not clear that he himself did it. Somebody did it. There's a photograph of it. So there's a kind of,
Oh, I see it.
and that's also interesting that it's two pieces and somebody set it up. So it's not clear that wrote it. And I like that too. There's something interesting about this found thing. Like John's is seeing something, it's a photograph. I mean, it's not a well-known photograph, but the fact
Sure.
that he saw it and he sees it differently tells you he's seeing the world differently than we are.
Yeah.
And it's also true of, say, the Lucian Freud photograph that was taken by John, I forget his name, in Francis Bacon's studio. If you see all the rolls of film, it's the only photograph where Lucian Freud has his hand in front of his face and is turned away. So it's like 30, it's a roll of photograph. I think it's 36. That's the one. And the only way I found that out was in an auction catalog, which I'm guessing is where Johns also saw the roll of photographs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a tiny image. It's not a huge image. And then he sees something in this roll of photographs and he picks that image. And I think that choice, it tells you how closely he's looking at things and that he sees something that we don't see and makes something out of it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's sort of, I think, an artist's process in some ways.
sure. But it's nice to see the artist process. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That it's a human thing. It's not like magic or inspiration. I mean, it's inspired, but it's not you're not waiting for inspiration. It's you're looking through an auction catalog and you come across one image out of hundreds.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow you see something.
Yeah.
And then if you think about it, just to keep ramble on, there's the flag I dream. There's a photograph that you see in an auction catalog. You don't know, I don't know. It's like he's not going to the same well, so to speak, for he's coming out of his everyday or daily experience, where his inspirations come from, right? He says that the crosshatch paintings came from seeing a car drive by with certain markings on it. I mean, things like that. I think
Oh,
that's,
really?
yeah,
I thought it was asphalt patterns.
yeah, I think it's that. And then he looks for it again. It's something that he sees once. He looks for it again. He can't find it. And then he comes up with this. And then it doesn't represent anything. And that's what he liked about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm quite fond of that particular body of work
Yeah, so am I.
because it's not representative, it's not figurative. It verges on abstraction, but not quite, and it just operates in this kind of intermediary space.
Right. And then someone sends him a postcard, I believe, of a Munch exhibition. It's a particular painting between the bed and the clock, self-portrait between the clock and the bed. It's a self-portrait that Munch does. He's just stepped out of the studio, which is behind him. There's a grandfather clock on his right. He's facing us in the bed on the left. And then Johns does a whole series of paintings coming out of that because the pattern on the blanket shares something with the crosshatch pattern. So,
Oh,
and this like
nice.
another way of seeing, right? I mean, just stuff like that has always fascinated me about his work, where he finds things, what he does with them.
And you had mentioned to me some points about Duchamp.
I did. Oh,
Yeah, right. It was particularly a quote, and maybe it's pulled out of context, a little bit out of context. You were saying that Duchamp actually quoted T.S. Eliot?
oh yes, he did. It's in a. I have this book. There's an essay he wrote, and he said that he's talking about artists talking about themselves. And
Ah,
he said that Eliot, he quotes this Eliot. I'm not going to get the quote. It's a long quotation. I'm not going to get it right. But Eliot proposes that there's the person that talks about his work and will always say, you know, I'm good. This is wonderful, whatever it is about his work. But that there's this other person within you, and it's the person that's more interesting to, I guess, the Duchamp is the person that doesn't say anything, and that's the person that I'm going to get this wrong. That's the person Duchamp thinks we should be interested in, not the public declaration, but the person that's like
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
that you keep to yourself, that has all his or their thoughts about their work and what they're
Well,
thinking.
what I grabbed from our conversation was that you said that there's a person inside any artist that doesn't want to listen to the world.
Right. That's also what I gathered. I mean, it feels that way. And then if you think of, you know, Duchamp, and there's an interview, I forget what it was recorded for, where he says he could have made a lot of these uh, objects. He didn't, right? He made very few.
Mm-hmm.
Forget, like he was not about production in that sense of being predictable. He just, you know, I mean, the things he chose, the uh, bottle rack, you know, putting the bicycle wheel on the stool. It's not like he did 50 of these. He did what, 7 or 8, I think.
Yeah, sure.
Very few. So they become more memorable for what they are rather than memorable because uh, they're part of a body, a series, right?
I think of them as just thoughts.
Right. Pretty complex thoughts.
Oh, yeah, sure. Sure.
Any thought, I guess, is complex at some level. If you're
I'm sorry, what?
any thought, I suppose, is complex if you are Freudian and believe in thought is more than just a thought, right?
Well, of
Cigar
course.
may sometimes just be a cigar, but a thought is always more than a thought. I don't know. That's just popped up in my head. I'm not totally responsible for that remark.
Yeah, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar.
Right.
That's a common statement.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we try to read the world, but sometimes we try to read it bringing too much to it of our own stuff. So that's also, I think, when you're writing about art, how much how much are you seeing, and how much are you bringing to what you're seeing? And I think that's all a kind of negotiation within yourself and trying to write about an artist.
I think that would be extremely difficult to figure out how to rein in yourself when you're also writing about an artist.
Right. You're just trying to let the artist, I mean, it's a kind of, you're trying to let the artist speak through you in some way, and yet also have your own voice within that speaking. I think that's kind of what happens. I mean, I guess I'm getting a little metaphysical or something, but I mean, I really believe that.
I would think that that's the best for the artist. That's the best scenario
Right.
because more often than not, people are always trying to inject their own impression.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's why I'm still writing about art. I mean, is it just the act of writing about art is still an interesting thing to me. You know, how do I write I mean, no matter who I'm writing about, it's always the question of how do I write about this person? Like, where do I begin?
Mm.
How do I
Mhm.
how do I implicate myself at the same time that I'm saying something about this person's work?
Mm-hmm.
And that's always, I've never had, you know, like, oh, this is what I do. I never figure it out. I always feel like I mean, as much as I know, I always feel like I'm starting from scratch. There's always this moment I go, this is the one that I'm not going to know how to do it. So far, so
But
good.
yeah, I
Knock
was
on
going to
wood.
say, I suspect you always find a way.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of drafts to write that first paragraph. David and Famine, I talked about that. The first paragraph is really like that's the hardest. Um, I mean, David's no longer with us, but he and I had many conversations about that. It was important to me. It's like you lay it out in the first, it's like a lawyer, you're laying it out in the first paragraph, your your argument, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak. How do you go about doing it? I think it takes more than one paragraph. David might have been able to do it one paragraph. It takes me about four. So I'm a little slower than him. So, and then
Sometimes it takes.
the other neurotic thing
Pardon?
I the other neurotic thing I do, Nathaniel West, who's a novelist that I love, whenever he wrote, he started right from the beginning. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he wrote the first page, and then when he wrote the second page, say he started from the beginning. He started going through the first page to get to the second page. I pretty much do that with everything I write. I always start at the beginning, reading what I wrote as if I'm an editor, and then it just so probably by the end of writing even a review, I've probably read the first chapter. I mean, the first paragraph 50 times just to
Mm-hmm.
get to the second, to the third, to the fourth. So,
And one builds on top of the other then.
right,
Uh-huh. You know, in an exhibition in 2001, the three unseen professors that you
right,
created,
right,
I'm particularly interested in that exhibition because, it's an exhibition of three professors that are, I think, mixed cultures, Asian and American, correct? Or Asian living in America?
right. They're either Asian living in America or yeah, I think they're all Asian. None of them were mixed.
None of them were mixed, right?
And they
And
all taught.
right, right. They were artists that were teaching professors.
Right,
And what I was interested in, because rarely, or I think extremely rarely, are there exhibitions in the United States about artists negotiating two cultures. And that's one of the things that you wanted to call attention to because you curated as the basis for this exhibition. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that and from your vantage point and how you, because you're of Asian descent and you're living in the United States and you have, I guess, almost all of your life negotiating those two cultures. And I wanted to find out from you what that was like from your viewpoint.
Well, again, particularly, I mean, my parents came to America in 1949, and my father was half English and half Chinese and was born in New York City uh, in 1920 or 21. So he always felt displaced because he didn't belong in either a Chinese culture or American culture. He's biracial at a point,
Hmm.
it was not even legal to have, have a mixed marriage. And
Absolutely.
um, and then he happened to be born in New York City was the reason why I was born in America, because otherwise my mother and father couldn't have come to America. They would have had to go somewhere else because there was the Chinese Exclusion Act. So
Hmm.
see everything as being like an accident, right? Or something. I mean, it's like sometimes I can't even think about it. And I was just interested in these three Asian men who came to America. They're all under very different circumstances and began making art. They all teach, they all have an influence on their students, and yet they don't fit in. They're not minimalist. They don't show. I mean, they show, but they're not part of the mainstream art
Hmm.
magazine world. And once I began to think about it, I went to Tina Kim and said there should be an exhibition about this. And what was great about working with her was she thought this should be a timeline that was on the wall, plus a lot of ephemera showing how they were part of the art world, but at the same time excluded from the art. I was actually trying to get a fourth person in, but it didn't work out. A woman, a ceramic sculptor, but the person who was in charge of her estate didn't want her in. So,
Mm. I was particularly interested in that topic because, as you know, I'm Chinese American. All of my life, I've had that experience of not feeling like any country is my own because
right,
the Chinese side of my family, my father's side, was definitive in its presence in my life. So when I would go to visit my Chinese family, it was all things Chinese. So
right,
Chinese language, Chinese food, Chinese conversations about all things Chinese. And then
right,
go visit my mother's side, which is Swiss American, and all things Swiss German and the Alps and
right,
skiing and
right,
and life in the Western European kind of consciousness. And then I'm raised in the United States, which is the amalgamation of everything,
right,
as most the more I think about it, the more I think that most people are raised with some sense of multiculturalism in their life, but it's not it doesn't bubble up to the top in terms of topics for art in the United States,
no, it doesn't.
except for the Black experience.
Right,
I do have to frame it that way, unless, of course, you talk about it from your cultural vantage point, like if you are an Asian artist painting with brush painting. So that
right,
identifies you as an Asian artist using brush painting, and then maybe if you make if your topic is America, then you succeed in conflating the two.
right.
So those are
Um,
things that I think about a lot.
So these three artists were all sculptors. They were all abstract. So
Uh-huh.
and none of them were figurative. So in a way, it's like, how do you get your culture, if you want to think about that, into your work without, you know, I mean, just how do you do it, and or what do you do? And also, I felt like I mean, one of them worked in marble, and he kept getting compared to certain. I mean, they all kept getting so. One of the things that happens is they always get compared to someone else who's
Hmm.
considered a higher model, or
Right.
they didn't get through because they weren't couldn't be compared to anyone else. Didn't get seen. They didn't get seen as being original or anything. They just didn't get seen. Um, and so I thought about that a lot because um, I think it's Frank O'Hara said that comparing things is the easiest thing to do, but seeing difference, similarities, the easiest thing to see, but difference is much harder.
Hmm.
And yeah, and the fact, I mean, one of the artists was taught uh, Jack Whitten direct carving. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that's going on that you feel like gets washed over in history.
Oh, completely. Completely. But this particular zone of trying to articulate something that is not recognized is, I think it's interesting because it's sort of being a ghost or
Right,
living in a liminal world where it's
right,
neither embraced nor completely rejected, but
right.
it's sort of like a silhouette of a thought.
Yeah. And then the other interesting thing that happened was that the show didn't get reviewed in an art in
No.
character art forum or art news. It did get reviewed in Ocula magazines in Europe, and
Uh-huh.
and twice an Asian American art critic came to see the show and talk to me, and both times their whole thing was, "Oh, it looks too much like someone else," and they left.
Ugh, ugh.
So it's like they weren't real. It was really interesting to just experience this phenomenon. You know?
Well, maybe it's the case of what's known on our own soil is not acceptable and they have to go abroad to be embraced.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like the way that jazz became the embracement in Europe. Jazz was
Right.
Europeans were totally enthusiastic about jazz, and jazz singers had to become successful there in order to become successful in the United States.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I saw Steve Lacy play for free in Berlin. And then
Oh,
the John McLaughlin and the Mahavishnu Orchestra, they were like huge in America in the 60s. Well, they
uh-huh.
live in Germany now. That's where, I mean, I didn't know what happened to him. He seemed to have vanished, right? He was a big deal. I mean, I loved listening to him in the 60s, and then somehow they seemed to vanish from view. And then one day I'm sitting in Berlin watching television, and there's John McLaughlin and the Mahavishnu Orchestra, and then
Right.
they say that he's now residing in Germany and has been for years. And then I suddenly go, oh, that's what happened to him.
Yeah, yeah, the Germans are really great at embracing artists in that way. It's
Oh
just
yeah,
it's kind of an amazing phenomenon.
right.
Well, I guess we have to go abroad to see insights into our culture,
Yeah, that's true. Huh.
to see how the foreign minds see the American culture.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, I wanted to also ask you if there's something in particular that you're working on now.
I am working on a book. I mean, I've been working on it for a while, but I feel like it's getting there. It's a book about every movie and television show that I saw with the poet John Ashbery.
Nice.
It's a series, it's just little snapshots of a moment where we're doing something and he makes a remark, where he says something. Uh, haven't decided where it ends. I mean, in terms of, well, he also took me to the opera, and he talked about that with me. And then, it's mostly anecdotal, but it's a reflection on his aesthetics through
Mm-hmm.
things that he said to me. So it's a kind of appreciation of his aesthetics through us seeing all sorts of movies, from Joseph Cornell, Rose Hobart, to David Lynch, to whatever. I mean, and also other things. I mean, he was voracious. Let's put it that way. So, and there was a certain point where we would watch TV or movies like at least once a week, if not twice a week.
Mm.
And this was a regular thing that we did for months on end. And the first time we ever talked about a movie was I was in his class. We talked about Heart of Glass by Herzog. I mean, the minute he started talking about movies, I thought, oh, this is wonderful, because I am in the movies, not to the extent I think he was, but I've watched a lot of movies. I've thought about it a lot. And so,
Will it be interesting to see how you conclude this all?
yeah, uh, yeah, I hope to finish the book by the end of September.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Yeah, it's already about 100 pages. It'll probably be about 140, maybe around there.
Well, I can't wait.
Okay.
In the meantime, John Yau, I have to say, unfortunately, we are at the end of our time together. So I want to thank you so much for your thoughts and your comments, and I'm excited about our future conversations that we will have.
I am too. Okay, we'll see each other later.
Thank you again. Thank you for listening to this episode of Listening with China Blue. I hope it inspires you to build your own listening practice. This begins as a daily practice of attentively listening without judgment. And ask yourself, what is your version of silence? If you want to learn more about me and my work, go to ChinaBlueArt.com, and please follow me on Facebook and at Instagram. Thank you.